Hello, and welcome to a new season of my Formula 1 Rise to the Top challenge with no assists versus 100% AI on the 2022 game. We come from the back of the leaderboard of F2, literally the back. The highest we've finished is 21st out of 22nd, and we have many spins and crashes over the 8 races in the last season. Now in the real world, no amount of money would buy you a seat at this point, but in the game, we probably have a really rich daddy somewhere. And we have opted to be in the Williams team with Alex Albon as our teammate. And we're going to see how far we're going to fare and how Codemaster is going to punish us for being a terrible driver. Hopefully we'd improve our driving at some point, but don't put too much hope into it. So after doing some development, not knowing what I'm doing, let's get into FP1. So a couple of changes. I'm going to have the racing line on for the practice session at the very least to help speed up the familiarization with the track. I've also changed my setup position a bit so I'm more in a similar seating position to Immobile's cars. Still quite far off, but a bit closer.
So this first race of the season is always quite difficult for us trackside and for those back at the factory as well, as it's the first time the car has run since winter testing. The more consistent mileage you can get in these sessions, the happier we'll be.
I've also decided not to bore you with 3-hour-long practice sessions, so here's the summary. In FP1 we spun 5 times on turn 1. Four times on turn 2. 2 times on turn 4. 5 times on turn 8. 2 times on turn 10. Once on turn 15, that gives a total of 18, so nearly an average of 1 spin per lap. Our starting setup was the increased top speed preset, and then we move into one that I found online after a couple of laps. It handles like a different car entirely. I also spun out on turn 2, going into the gravel, meaning that I am actually stuck there, and then that ended our first practice run. Luckily that was towards the later end of the practice session, so we still managed to make most of the session. The best lap of the session was a 1 minute 36.143 over 17 laps and 3 compounds. In FP2 we slightly improved, having 2 spins in turn 1, 4 on turn 2, 1 in turn 4, 3 on turn 8, 1 on turn 10, once on turn 11, and 1 on turn 13, totaling 12 spins. We bumped Paris from behind, which gives us some damage to the front wing. We also had a contact with Alonso, as he spins into turn 10, and we couldn't avoid him fast enough. We also had a puncture as we tried to run a race strategy on worn softs.
We're seeing the pressure is gone in the front left. You've got a puncture in the front left tyre.
And finally FP3, we've got even less spins, only 6 in total for this session. 1 each in turn 1, turn 4, turn 10, and 1 on 11, which I'll show you later because of reasons. and twice on turn 8. I also ran the tyre wear program, and note to self, not pressing the gas pedal on the corners is probably going to help, as we can see the graph going down as we are not accelerating through the corners and instead accelerate after the corner. Another puncture in this section, running the race strategy on worn softs again. Man, we're really running low on tyres. If I can reduce my tyre wear, I can probably have more practice laps going around the circuit as well.
You've got a puncture on your front right tyre. Puncture in the front right.
We have 2 contacts this time out, one with Leclerc, eating his 30 into turn 4, locked up and gave him a little bump, and one with Tsunoda as we spin out on turn 11, he was right behind us and ran right over our front wing. Now there are quite a few off tracks during all of these practice sessions, but I won't show them here on screen as that's a total of 55 off tracks. 55 off tracks over 3 sessions. That is a ridiculous number, and the big takeaway really is that I am slow.
Okay, that lap was no good, we need you to improve on that. Okay, that lap was no good, we need you to improve on that. We didn't really get the data we needed on that run, you might want to give it another go.
And that I should take care of my car more, reducing the damage so that I can get more time driving instead of skipping the repair time.
We've had to spend time repairing the damage to the car.
Now here comes qualifying. Throughout the practice session I have mostly been using the drive out option when I'm leaving the pit, because I know that I will have to pit during the race, so it is probably good practice. So again, doing the same thing, when we're doing our warm-up lap, we had the near miss with Tsunoda. On our first attempt of a time lap, we immediately spin into turn 1. Lap 2 was slightly better, we managed to get through half the lap, and then Hamilton dived down the inside of me out of the final corner because I was going too slow, and then I spun. But Hamilton also just immediately go back into the pits. Now the AI really has some really weird moments during the time I'm playing. Things like not overtaking you on a straight line because you are trying to save fuel, and they would overtake you and then immediately go back in the pits when you're going at a relatively pace. On the lap immediately afterwards, we did have the potential to improve the first sector, but we screwed up in turn 4, running very wide and then losing all of our advantage there. However, we did manage to gain some time out of turn 8 and turn 10. But then we lost a chunk again through turn 13. But overall improved our time by 0.35 of a second. With only 3 minutes to go after pitting, I put another pair of softs and try and see if I can push for a better time in the closing stages of Q3. By the time we've left the pit lane, we have 2.5 minutes to go.
Okay, there's 2 minutes left in this session and we're in the drop zone. We need a quick lap or that's qualifying over for us.
We did have a little spin coming out of turn 10 on the outlap, but luckily we managed to make it through the line before the time reached 0. Actually, quite a bit of time, we've got 50 seconds to spare. Pretty good on turn 1, I'm on the white line, I think with my left tyres. Probably could be a bit more on the curb when braking, but we got to the apex, off to the middle of the track and upshift early and got to the 4th gear as I got to apex of turn 2, as per Nico's instructions. Braking a tad late for turn 4, running wide and missing the apex completely. And running wide out of track as well as an exit meant that we've lost all the time we've gained previously. As you can tell, I'm blaming this on the completely useless radio call from the engineer. Continuing through that off track, it affected all of the corners 5 through 8, missing the very important apex, as well as juddering off the throttle as we tried to accelerate. I got too high a gear on turn 9, which meant that I was going too hot into turn 10, missing the apex and a poor exit down the straight. Now at this point I knew that the lap was lost, so I just went back to the pit lane instead.
Stopping this lap.
Our best lap was on lap 4 with a 1 minute 34.359, which is more than 4 seconds slower than our teammate Alex at a 1 minute 30.829. This is not looking good for us.
Months of rumour and speculation all come to an end today as we return to racing for the opening event of what promises to be an enthralling season. Welcome along then to round 1 of this year's Formula 1 World Championship. We go racing today around the 3.36 miles of the magnificent Bahrain International Circuit with 15 corners and 2 good passing opportunities into turns 1 and 4. Keep an eye out for drivers locking the front left tyre into the tricky braking zone of turn 10.
That would most definitely be me.
Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position. Sergio Perez lines up alongside. Stroll and the engineer.
That's
It's
plus
almost time for
6.
those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today.
Plus 6.
Here we are in 2022 at the start of another Formula 1 World Championship. It all begins here, the start of the next generation of Formula 1. With the end of the second turbocharged era, a new dawn begins. New regulations have been brought in to promote better racing, with the 2 big standout changes being the wheel size increase and the aerodynamics on the car itself. But will this result in us having a repeat fight for the driver championship? Will Mercedes retain their constructors title? We have lots to discuss.
Okay, I'm bored now.
First race of the season, and unfortunately we're at the back of the grid, but let's show the team what you can do from here. Okay, how was that?
And here we go, our first race of the season, as well as our first ever formation lap. It was mostly fine, other than accidentally overtaking Stroll in turn 13, but promptly giving it back. Apparently, I'm also incapable of parking my car where I need to be by about 2 meters. Immediately 5 lights and off we go. A slow start for us, but that's good as we managed to avoid much of the carnage as we see carbon fiber flying off in turn 1. Following in a bit of a distance in turn 4, we immediately spin on lap 1.
That start was okay, now stay alert for threats around you.
Now Alex and Vettel pitted after lap 1 as there was damage presumably from the contact I saw in turn 1 and turn 4, so I went past them as they pitted. When I got to turn 11 I spun out, and when I was trying to get myself going again I spun again. Alex arrived on scene and crashed into the side of me, ending his race. Oh no!
Slow down, your delta's negative, which means you're going too fast. Reduce your pace.
Oh no, I'm sorry, Alex!
Okay, Alexander's dropped out of the race.
I'm sorry. Now this being our first VSC, we are not very good with keeping our delta as small as possible, and as you can see when we get started again we are quite a bit off from Vettel where we could have cashed up a bit more. We have another spin on lap 6 turn 2. As we get into lap 8, we are getting lapped by the front runners, needing spinning on turn 8 as we let them do so.
Okay, blue flag conditions create a gap and let the car behind through.
Running wide on turn 11 as Hamilton laps us. Russell, Norris and Alonso also passes us before turn 14. By lap 10, the top 15 has already lapped me as the medium tyre gets more and more worn out, and I'm running wide more and more and going even slower. So my pit window is open now from lap 12 to lap 16, so at this point I'm considering when I should pit. Realistically it doesn't actually matter as I'm already a lap down and putting on new tyres won't save that, only a miracle would. So I'm about to pit in after lap 13 as Ricciardo lapped me again after his pit stop. But I thought that he would have passed me a lot sooner, and also I forgot my tyres were useless now, and I'm also too far on the inside and going too fast to actually make turn 11. So I just rammed Ricciardo, spun out from the contact, Bottas tore off my front wing, or what's left of it, Schumacher completely destroys my front left, and to add insult to injury, the other Haas, Magnussen also gave me a tap as well from the back. This is probably the messiest crash I've been in involving the most amount of cars. Marvelous.
It was a magnificent race and a drive right out of the top draw to take the win for Red Bull today.
So a double DNF for Williams on the first race in 2022 as Red Bull takes a 1-2 finish, Checo topping Max and Russell taking third for Mercedes. Looking at the timing sheet for throughout the whole weekend, the best was obviously in qualifying. It is still very slow, but the takeaway point I think is how much consistently improved throughout the sessions. From FP1 we have 18 spins, FP2 we have 12, FP3 we had 6. The number of off-tracks also went down as well, not as much, but that's because we're trying to follow our off-track guide from Nico Rosberg's YouTube video and pushing the limit of my personal driving limit. There's definitely still a large learning curve for me. Things I've learned and gained experience with the next weekend is that the ERS needs to be activated during the race, which doesn't actually happen in the practice sessions. The entire practice program don't apply the throttle on until the car is straight. And as usual, our target is to not spin and to not crash out of the sessions, which we actually managed to do in 3 out of the 5 sessions. FP1 we spun into gravel, but that wasn't a devastating crash. We should probably also avoid contact with our teammates as well, and also trying to close the gap with our teammate. Ooh, you lose driver acclaim if you don't finish or if you crash out. That's it from me this episode. It does take a bit longer now that we're doing 3-hour-long practice sessions as well as a longer race and qualifying as well. But hopefully as we go through this, I'm going to improve both my editing and my storytelling and my driving as well. Also check out my piano and flute tutorial series as well as other hobby videos on my channel. And I'll see you on the next video on Master of None. Bye!